If you're feeling anxious about the fact that we are currently making the planet uninhabitable, then I want you to know that that's a completely reasonable way to feel right now, and you are not alone. In a randomized poll of over 600 teenagers, 57% of them said that they were feeling afraid about climate change. And it's common enough to have these sorts of feelings that there's now several terms for them. There's eco-anxiety, climate grief, eco-despair. Over the last year and a half, I've been dealing with a lot of climate grief. Basically, I just can't stop thinking about the fact that millions of people, like real people alive today, are dying, or they're going to die because of something that is completely avoidable. We can stop using fossil fuels, but so far we've completely failed to do so. It feels completely out of control, and it's depressing. This isn't a video about why I'm feeling that way. That's this video, which you can go check out, but this is hopefully going to be a video that is helpful to you or to anyone that is feeling anxious about our dying planet. Over a month ago, back in the before times, I talked with YouTuber Climate Adam about climate grief. I wanted to hear his perspective on this because he's been working on climate change for over 9 years now. And as someone who's watched his channel for a really long time, I've always been struck by the fact that he usually seems to be surprisingly positive in his videos, and he actually often makes me laugh in them, which I find remarkable. So I wanted to ask him about that. How do you stay upbeat in your videos?
I guess maybe the first thing to say is I don't always manage to. There's some times when I crack. I really have expressed certain aspects of what I feel, and those have been really negative at times. I think it would be weird if my attitude all the time was was cheerful. I think also what I do is I suppose I'm not making light of climate change. I'm not saying climate change is funny. I guess I'm trying to find humor maybe in how we talk about it or how we respond to it. So even if I find climate change really serious and really scary and really overwhelming, I still think there are other things kind of around that, including myself, that can be and maybe should be made fun of.
In my last video I said, that I'm feeling a little bit, I've felt a lot of climate despair. And I was surprised by how many people commented being like, I had no idea other people felt this way. I wanted to make this video partly just to be like, hey, you're not alone. What would you say to people that are dealing with the climate anxiety issue on their own?
I guess there have been times when I felt like that. I felt really alone, and in fact, maybe the worst time was when I went to the climate negotiations in Katowice in 2018. And I got there, and it just felt like a fair almost. All these big talks and everyone cheering, and at the same time, global emissions had gone up that year when they needed to be falling rapidly, and I just felt like, I don't know, I felt like an alien in this place. And then I found one of my friends there, climate journalist Jocelyn Timperley, and just spoke to her about how I was feeling, and she told me how it felt to her and what it meant to her. And yeah, just talking about it and sharing that with someone was so powerful. It's not like I didn't still feel terrible about it. I did, but I felt like I wasn't alone, and this was something we were sharing, and not just the feeling of, but sharing the impetus of. We were two people who felt how severe this was, but really keenly wanted to do something about it. And not just then, but in life in general, I guess that's been what's helped me a lot is talking to other people who are in the same position. Whether, that's on Twitter in the comments or, over Skype.
Talking to people is great too, because I know for me it's helpful. It's because there's been times when I felt alone for sure, but it also furthers the conversation. It gets other people to know that this is a wider issue than they might have thought. And you end up talking about, hopefully you end up talking about ways to move forward, ways to solve the problem, right? Talking about climate change is obviously really important, but it's also important to talk about how you feel in regards to the planet. And That's something that doesn't come naturally to me. I don't know if it does for you, but it's something that for me, it makes making videos like this really difficult because I feel uncomfortable. But I also have learned that it is an essential part for me in getting through this, like in managing my grief about the planet. Earlier this year, I started working full-time on a documentary about climate change, and I realized pretty early on that I was not going to be able to take care of myself and do that without support, without some kind of help. Back in the days when I could leave my apartment, I was going every week to a climate support group. It was a really small group of very concerned people, and we just talked about things and about how we felt about the current state of affairs, and that was really useful to me.
Any group that works on climate change in some way hopefully should act to some extent as a support group, and this is something that I've often felt. Because you're thinking about the same things, you're able to talk to each other and share bits of wisdom and empathize with each other. I'm not saying that's an equivalence to, formal therapy or a formal support group, but there are informal support networks out there for people who maybe aren't feeling this quite as severely, or maybe before you feel it quite as severely. So not only do I think action is the antidote to despair, but action with a group hopefully is an antidote to this kind of isolation.
And now that I'm indoors, I'm actually meeting online with a professional therapist who is helping me navigate these emotions. I know that not everyone can afford to do that, and I am so grateful that I can. And again, these emotions are entirely rational. It's an extreme situation, and we should reasonably be having an extreme emotional response to it. That's human. This is a really serious problem for a lot of people. And if that's you, remember that you're not alone. But if you are having suicidal thoughts, then please ask for help. There is always someone that you can call, no matter where you are. I will leave some resources in the video description. Please find those. And even if you're feeling less affected, it's still quite common to feel helpless in all of this. And Adam had some good thoughts on that.
I guess one of the most common kinds of questions I get in situations like that is it already too late? For someone who has this kind of almost nihilistic fear, it's too late, so maybe there's no point in doing anything. We should just all, go and live on a mountain. For someone who's kind of getting into that mindset, I guess I would say it's never too late. This climate change is not a binary thing. And what makes it quite terrifying is also what means we can always act on it. What makes it so terrifying is, as you said, every action we take contributes to it in some way. But every bit of warming matters, so that means every action we can take to avoid some carbon going into the atmosphere and avoid some warming happening, that is a good thing. We set ourselves limits for climate change, and those limits are important, but no matter how hot the world gets, it's always important we try and stop it getting even hotter.
I feel like a similar response I get is climate change is such a big problem and no one else is doing anything for it. What can I do? What can one person do? And to me, it's like, okay, well, firstly, do you vote? You vote because even though it's just one person's vote, you know that matters. You know that can make a difference. And then the other thing I say to that is that there's tons of examples throughout history of one person making a difference, right? Look at Greta Thunberg.
It's tempting. I can find myself sometimes slipping into that, thinking, oh, maybe, nothing I do has any consequence on anything, so why bother when I just, go to the pub. But I often remember something that my mum and some of her friends told me. So my mum is South African, and she left South Africa while it was still during apartheid. And, I asked her once, at the time you left, did you ever think you would live to see the end of apartheid? And she said, absolutely not. It was just unimaginable that this huge fundamental problem with the society she grew up in could so radically change. And now, of course, she was coming at it from a particular perspective as a white South African, but even so, I guess it just reminds me that these things which seem so insurmountable and require such collective action can sometimes be shifted. And I suppose I try and imagine that future with respect to climate change sometimes. I try and think, like, what if we do solve this? What will the world look like? You know, what will it be like if we're not polluting the air, if we're not worried about, you know, what the next 20, 30 years will look like as a result of the greenhouse gases we're pumping into the atmosphere? Yeah, and I think that's sometimes a really nice antidote to despair as well, is not just focusing on what we're trying to avoid, but like the beauty of the thing we might create in avoiding that disaster.
And this is the biggest thought that keeps me going, because imagine what this means. This essentially means stopping all air pollution. Imagine the city of Delhi always looking like this instead of this. People would live longer and healthier lives, and once we build the renewable energy infrastructure, we essentially get free energy forever. And to make this transition possible, we need to transform our world into one that is way more equitable for people of all classes, races, and backgrounds. And that is the world that I'm fighting for. Adam and I just made a video about what you can do, what actions you can take for the climate, and it's out now over on his channel, so please check it out and subscribe over there. Lastly, I want to thank the thousands of you that have left positive and constructive comments on my videos. Thank you. And I really want this to be a positive community, one where we can support each other. And I work hard to moderate the comments in the videos that I make, but honestly, sometimes it's really hard because there are a lot of trolls on YouTube, if you didn't know. So right now I'm looking for moderators, for people to help me out and help make this a safe space for people. So if you're interested in that, just go down into the description or into the comments and there's some more information there. I hope this video was helpful. Don't forget to subscribe to Adam's channel. Stay safe, and thanks for watching.